put off by how long this video is, don't worry, I try to jam-pack my videos with as much content and as much detail as I possibly can. Anything I feel I can comment on and that I feel you might be interested in, I pretty much put in the video. I try not to repeat myself and talk fairly fast. I either have or will cover other parts of this franchise, and this video either is or will be linked below. I'm not going to restate here what I did or will say in the other video. These videos get long enough as it is. I got this either as a present or I got it on discount, so I did not pay very much money for this and am thus not bitter on account of that. Sabotage move review and the customary attaching of the timer. There we go. Starting with the plot. And this is the IMDb summary. Members of an elite DEA task force find themselves being taken down one by one after they rob a drug cartel safe house. And my first thought is, you know, what would be the big difference between this and End of Watch? And really what it boils down to is, in that one, it's only two, and you know, obviously they're cops, not DEA. And this, it's kind of a slasher murder mystery, and the plot starts immediately and goes through the entire movie, where, you know, End of Watch, a lot of it is, you know, scenes from the perspective of the leads. It's not as much of an overall plot. And again, I absolutely love End of Watch. Now, unrelated to review. On the 8th of January, the Blockbuster site started streaming. You know, the following movie became available for streaming. Shark-and-Saw Women's Prison Massacre. I love how many different exploitation-y things they fit in there. I just imagine the concept coming out of a pitch meeting where a nervous writer, let's say standing over here, is alone with this silent figure of an intense producer standing over here. The movie's set in a prison for women where there's a massacre because of sharks, and it takes place in the South. Okay, go write it. It's been forever since I did a video like that. Moving on plot. And this is from the IMDb trivia. Although screenwriter Skip Woods is credited with screenwriting alongside David Ayer, very little of his original script was used for the film. Just the central plot idea of a group of cops being picked off one by one. And I actually, honestly, this feels very much like a Skip Woods script. I don't know if maybe he rubbed off on Ayer because the tone, I'll get more into the tone under the section titled Tone. It has that really immature kind of, with, you know, kind of obnoxious stuff of, yeah, just, I don't know. It seems weird to me that this wasn't his script, but then the core plot idea, that probably the writing of that, I can imagine, is left over from his, because it is one of those Skip Woodsian, utterly nonsensical plot, and I don't really want to give away. I'm going to talk about it in the thoughts section, because I want you to go into this movie, if you're going to watch it at all, not knowing why the plot is as stupid as it is, because you're literally sitting there watching and going, oh, okay, so that, and then that, wait, what? When there's like a certain thing happens, and it's like suddenly the concept of this, yeah, just makes absolutely no sense. And then when you get to the ending, the overall, yeah, just this is a movie that does make no sense, but it's enjoyable to watch for sure. And yeah, you know, I've heard people say that the ending is bad. Yeah, I'll discuss it in detail, and the original endings in the thoughts section. But seriously, don't let anybody tell you different. This movie is awesome. It's one of the best movies ever made. If you're 13. Length. The movie is an hour and 44.5 minutes long with end credits, and without, it's an hour and 38 minutes. Characters. Arnie plays John Breacher Wharton. I loved his performances in the Terminator movies, especially the very first one. And like Jean-Claude Van Damme, some of the best performances of theirs, when they aren't struggling through lines in English, their second language, especially when they're completely silent and either playing someone who expresses very little emotion or who's especially charming, where that's like one of their defining attributes. You know, where a lot of these action leads, they can be charming, but it's not really like, it's not the sort of the main of but yeah, in there, I find especially Van Damme, Cyborg, the first Cyborg movies, it was the only of them that I've watched. You know, that movie has a number of problems, but his performance is actually quite good. And the and yeah, Lionheart, which is also known as Wrong Bet, which is also known as AWOL, which I did a separate review of, so you can watch that for me to go into more detail. But yeah, again, he says very little and doesn't express a lot of emotion, and it's one of his best performances. And yeah. Now, and Sam Worthington as James Monster Murray. He's quite good. I haven't seen him in all that many movies, but yeah, he's quite enjoyable. Very intense a lot of the time. Mireille Enos as Lizzie Murray. I didn't know at first if I was gonna really get into this character or not. I kind of loved her characters, and not I wouldn't want to know her in real life, but she was fun to watch. Olivia Williams as investigator Carolyn Brentwood. She's quite good, and I did not see the developments of her character coming. And Terrence Howard as Julius Sugar Edmonds. Terrence Howard did not get to be badass in Iron Man 1, and definitely not 2 and 3. And that SWAT type movie, I forget, he was in, was meh overall. finally I get to see him kick ass. I can imagine he does in other movies, but these are, you know, the three that really, yeah. Joe Manganiello as Joe Grinder Phillips. I don't know him in anything, but apparently he's the guy playing Deathstroke, so that's, yeah, I can see that, though if I had only watched this movie and not seen the little sneak preview, then I'm not sure I would be able to tell. Harold Perrineau as investigator Darius Jackson. He turned investigator since he's still looking for Walt. Martin Donmans, Floyd DeMel, Max Martinez, Tom Pyro Roberts. I think it was on the IMDb Movie Connections. Someone actually wrote that him being called Pyro is a reference to X-Men. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I do think it's worth noting that that word isn't specific to the X-Men comics. The word actually means something in real life. It's not just this strange, like if you have a character named, let me think if I can. Crap, what is Jubilee's real? Is it Jubilee Nation? Something like that. Yeah, if you've got a character actually named that and something not X-Men, that's probably an X-Men reference. But Pyro, that means something outside of the X-Men. But yeah, some people are really, really eager to find connections. Josh Holloway as Eddie Neck Jordan, and Troy Garrity as Agent Spolchek. Yeah. Now, I do know most of these actors from other stuff. Now, Ayer directed films tend to have sympathetic characters on both sides of a conflict. You know, gang warfare, military conflicts, cops, etc. This one, I don't think has a single sympathetic character. Like you meet Caroline, and you're like, oh, she's gonna be our sympathetic character, and then she has like she gets one or two lines of dialogue in, and then you realize, oh, we're gonna hate her as much as the rest of the characters. Great. There's yeah, this one really didn't. Again, that's very, very Skip Woods, not very David Ayer. I really the only I think this might be the only. Oh, wait, actually, End of Watch also doesn't. Well, no, the actual villains aren't sympathetic, but there are lawbreakers who are sympathetic. So yeah, I think this might be his only one where absolutely no one. Yeah. So certainly it is where we don't like the, you know, where we have no sympathy for the leads, I would say, the good guys. And we do in fact have at least one character who is or was military, and I'm not going to give away exactly who here, but yeah. You know, Street Kings remains the Only Ayer-directed film not to have one of those, and he didn't write that one. He did rewrites on that one, as far as I understand, but he didn't write it, yeah, fully. And again, note, I am specifying Ayer-directed stuff. I have not watched a lot of what he has written but not directed, but I am considering going there. I don't know why either. IMDb stuff. A tagline for this was "Leave no loose ends." And according to director David Ayer, Sabotage was heavily cut by the studio in favor of delivering more of an action-based film rather than a mystery thriller. And the original cut of Sabotage was rumored to be close to 3 hours. Personally, I think you have to like the characters and care more about what happens to them for a mystery thriller to be particularly compelling. I found that the action was the most enjoyable to watch in this. And I do acknowledge that the action is deeply messed up because of the way the violence is presented. The Beastie Boys' Mike D and Adam Horowitz turned down a request to use their 1994 song Sabotage in promos for the film. And in his will, Adam Yauch, if that's him, prohibited the use of his music in advertisements. So, yeah, I can kind of see why. Well, I don't know if they got to read the script before they turned it down, but yeah. Let's see. I forgot to actually make sure to notice this, but yeah, I think I already mentioned all of this is IMDb trivia, unless otherwise stated in my commentary of it, obviously. In the minute 43 to 45, you see a poster of Rambo in the background, but with the head of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah, I saw somewhere else that apparently they did one with Ronald Reagan, and it was called Ronbo, which, yeah, I like that. The plot was loosely based on Agatha Christie's classic novel, And Then There Were None. That I can definitely see. And Kate Mara and, I don't know if you, that's not Isla Fisher auditioned for the role that went to Malin Ackerman, and Ackerman dropped out due to pregnancy, replaced by Mirelle Anos. I could see Malin Ackerman in the role, and Kate Mara. I'm not sure I know Fisher from anything. I'm gonna stop trying to pronounce her first name and embarrass myself and her. Now, and yeah, there's this scene where you see pictures of, you know, Arnie, yeah, you know, his family, and those are Arnie's actual family. Oh, right. A subplot involving Brentwood trying to nail an abusive father who has killed his young daughter was cut from the final film, but it is briefly mentioned in the scene when Brentwood and Preacher talk. I'm gonna cut that sentence off right there. And the storyline was cut to speed up the pace of the film and concentrate on the action. I think it might have been a decent, a fine subplot. I think that would have been something we would care about. It would be something. It would make at least one thing that we'd actually care about. Where the, I mean, it's like, in theory, you obviously you want the bad guys stopped, but the good guys are really, really unpleasant people. So you don't care when they die for sure. I mean, it's like, oh, okay, can we get someone likable to take their place and to take down the bad guys? It's, yeah, which is not a good reaction for the audience to have to your action, to your movie, unless that is specifically the point, which I don't think it was. I think we are supposed to care. And Australian distributors removed it from the cinema release and released the movie straight to DVD because it did so poorly in the US. I think this one did come to our theaters, but I'm not 100% sure. Excuse me. And Sam Worthington and Arnold Schwarzenegger have both had roles in Terminator movies as Terminators. Although Arnie does not play a role in the film that Worthington was in. It was only Arnie's face superimposed. Yes, I just spoiled that Terminator Salvation has an appearance by Arnold Schwarzenegger. I hope you'll forgive me for revealing such an unpredictable twist. And then it points out that, you know, 2 lost actors are in this. Now, tone. Now, there is disturbing content in all Ayer-directed films, and before this in Suicide Squad, it wasn't really sadistic. Yeah, these 2 movies are indeed sadistic. You know, before these, the sadistic characters were very clearly messed up, not fun. You know, I'm not saying that there isn't a single character that we're supposed to at least some of the time sympathize with in our directed films that can be sadistic, but we're not supposed to think that it's cool that he's sadistic. We're supposed to be scared by him, and Ayer made that work. You know, it has that effect. And yeah, in this, you know, and it is in fact R-rated, like everything Ayer has directed prior to Suicide Squad. And I'm guessing, you know, hopefully he will get to play around in the DCEU, because it's still, at least, you can say a lot of things about Suicide Squad, but it was at least fun, which is kind of almost against the rules in the Zack Snyder directed ones. And like everything else Ayer has directed, there is a sense of fatalism to the film. Ayer's record. I acknowledge that Suicide Squad has problems, but and you know, the, let's see, and this one as well. These 2 are the only of the movies. Let's see. Yeah, you know, the rest of the movies he's directed, I absolutely love. I can't completely. I love Suicide Squad too. I definitely know it has problems, and I'm not saying everybody should love it, but I can't not love it. This one is the only one that I don't love, and I think it could have been a movie that I would love. It's mainly the tone, and then this whole mystery thing where we don't care if, I mean, yeah, we really don't care. And yeah, you know, and I guess this one I wouldn't necessarily say it's well worth watching. I mean, if a friend of yours has a copy of this and lets you borrow it, just watch like the first 20 minutes of the movie and the last third of the movie, and just make up, you know, make up in your own head what happens between those. It's almost definitely going to be better than what is in that chunk of the movie. And yeah, other than it, the action is legitimately fun to watch. Again, acknowledging that it's really messed up how eager it is to show. Yeah. And, you know, rewatching some of those movies for this and thinking over his entire, you know, directorial career up to this point, you know, 2018, he did gradually move towards higher body counts, towards us getting an actual kick out of the kills and normalizing the disturbing elements of the gang life, police work, and the like, where, yeah, at first it was, I mean, in Harsh Times, I feel like when I forget the, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not always good with names. Christian Bale's character. I feel like when he's told that he's going to be going around, yeah, I guess I'm not gonna say exactly, but kind of the thing that he knows he's going to be doing, and what he really doesn't want to go back to, is kind of what this movie celebrates doing. It's like if Christian Bale's character in that movie had watched this movie, yeah, he would have, towards Ayer, after directing this, I'm gonna be really charitable and say he would have written him an angry letter. It's, yeah, and that's, you know, that's Hollywood. You go in with this kind of really, I mean, some are eager to just make a lot of money from right away, but it really seems like Ayer went in wanting to, I mean, he's continued to tell these stories and be in this environment and be very honest about the environment. But at first, he really was, I mean, it is such a leap just between Harsh Times and Street Kings. But then we go here, again, Keanu Reeves and Street Kings would probably have been hunting. If Keanu Reeves' character in Street Kings was in this movie, he probably would have turned out to be the one killing them, and he would have, once revealed to be that, he would have made very coherent arguments for why he was doing that. It really does, yeah. If someone could, like, re-edit, like edit in scenes of Keanu Reeves and Street Kings into this movie and somehow make him the killer, yeah, I'd watch that. But yeah, you know, he came in with this idea that he wanted to let regular people know how bad it is without ever celebrating it, and then gradually he's moved into celebrating it, where this, I don't think this movie consciously like objects to the material that it, you know, the kind of stuff that they're doing, and it kind of feels like, I don't know, maybe like subconsciously some part of Ayer is still working towards that end, because it's not completely not there. Like, you see a lot of movies with this kind of, where they are just celebrating the really nasty stuff, where nothing in the film makes you think that you're supposed to be, yeah, if everything about it, yeah. And that isn't quite the case here, but yeah. I realize I'm not getting into a lot of detail about the film. I feel a lot of what I would say is spoilery, slash I'm maybe going to move towards, I like being able to talk in detail, and I don't want to spoil things for, yeah, so I might continue doing this from now. I haven't completely decided, at least for movies that I don't watch in theaters. But yeah, for now, I'm doing it this way. And yeah. Now, moving on to Rewatched for Research. Now, as you might have been able to guess, I rewatched Harsh Times and Street Kings. Those are the only Ayer-directed films that I own. It's you know, it's very silly of Quicks trying to outrun Captain America. Meanwhile, Steve Rogers is getting pushed around by Neo. And Terry Crews literally, this is not a spoiler, literally dies from being a few days away from retirement. That's, yeah. And yeah, I've watched every Ayer directed movie, and all at least twice except for this and Bright. Again, I haven't watched Bright at all. I hear Bright is like kind of Blue Lives Matter propaganda kind of. You know, Ayer is known for sympathetic depictions of gang members, but it's possible that he is moving away from that. He sort of started on that with End of Watch, and you know, and I can imagine it's also about, I want to say Max Landis wrote it, and I also hear that he's turning out to be a really, really awful person. And yeah, I'm glad it's coming out. And I hope it's going to ruin his career. And I do hope that he doesn't take Ayer with him, because I do feel that Ayer, even though his films are getting to be more unpleasant, he is still trying to make people realize that people doing bad things are not just pure evil, and that a lot of them, when given the chance, can move away from that, and that some of the people dragging them back in are the people otherwise thought of as the good guys. And yeah, but if he does move into propaganda from the other side, then yeah, I'm not gonna defend that. Now, I will not get around to Bright anytime soon unless it becomes available other places than on Netflix. I am really super not into subscription-based, services. I get OCD and feel like I have to spend every second I'm awake and not at work watching it. Unless it's one of those where you can't, where it's set numbers of stuff you can watch within the time, so as to not waste money I'm spending on this subscription. Almost the only, actually I think the only time I've ever used stuff like that was, there was this service around here, I'm not even sure it still exists. Actually it might, I think it might, they maybe got bought by my country's Netflix, I'm not entirely sure. They, every 6 months or so, they would give me a free trial. I don't remember if it was maybe a month or so, wherein I could watch basically, was it as many as I wanted, or was there some limitation? I forget. And I used that to watch the Dexter seasons that I couldn't borrow from friends. And, you know, other than the last several of them, which I ended up buying instead. Yeah, that kind of thing. I made sure to definitely watch something as yeah, and those are about the only times that I really marathoned any series. I did that for those Dexter, yeah. And then once that free trial was up, I would cancel my subscription, and then yeah, 6 months later they'd offer another free trial, and I'd use that free trial and then cancel it. And this, I forget how many free trials they gave me, maybe 3 or something, and then I don't know if they just stopped doing free trials altogether, or they were just like, this dude's not gonna actually stay with us. Because yeah, if you're gonna actually do the first one's free kind of thing, and try to trick people, you know, get them hooked on something, and then hope that they'll stick around and give you money for something that they wouldn't otherwise give you money for. You know, I'm not saying pirate, I'm not at all, but I'm saying, you know, personally I do without. I don't want to watch that many things if it's going to cost me that much. I can, you know, the libraries here actually will let you, that's how I watch this movie, you know, will actually lend you these things, you know, and it's not as if I'm not paying for that through taxes. So, you know, and that's not one of those where I get all OCD. I hope now that I've realized that I'm not going to get all OCD about it, but yeah. Sorry, not sorry. If you're going to do that kind of thing, I am going to use your free trial, and I'm not going to keep being a customer, and I'm not going to lose a second of sleep over that. Now, the reason I did not watch this when it hit theaters, you know, 2014, was that I'm not that interested in movies Arnie and the other 80s action heroes do today. It's just a little sad when senior citizens refuse to accept that they're no longer young. I'm not saying that actors need to quit, but just do other things than this kind of action thing. I'm not gonna. I mean, it's impressive that they're managing to do it still, but it's just, yeah. I'm sorry. If they hadn't been famous before, if they were just hypothetically, let's say that someone who wasn't famous as an actor or an athlete, martial arts, whatever, aging guy comes up, but he's really pumped, and he starts making action movies, he's not gonna do well. It's not the fact that, it's because it's nostalgia. That's basically it. And frankly, a lot of their older movies are a lot better than what they're making today, you know. Now, but yeah, basically the only other ones I watched are the Expendables films. And I never thought that those would be good films. It's just, we all look at train wrecks, don't we? And, you know, I do also think, I think it is notable. I think it is that the fact that, you know, it's the only way we'll see all of these guys in the same film. And obviously that does end up meaning that a lot of them get shafted. But yeah, I do. I mean, if I have to respect the effort to actually make sure that they, yeah. And I do also just find it really funny how many obvious missteps they made with Mickey Rourke crying in the first one. I can care about Mickey Rourke crying, but not in that kind of movie. And you know, I mean, Wrestler, that movie just gets me hard. That came out wrong. It's, yeah. Make of that what you will. Man, I almost wish I did that one intentionally. You know, let's see, what was the thing with the second one? Yeah, and one of the things is also the first one has all the action right there at the end, and not very much before that point. The second one has a ton of action right at the very start, and the climax is, but yeah, a lot of it isn't, and yeah, it wastes Jean-Claude Van Damme in the wrong way, and it's just, yeah. And then the third one, they actually, Sly started this whole thing saying I can't stand that he's saying, get these kids off, you know, get these kids off my lawn. I mean, out of my action movies. And he's like complaining that today it's superpowers instead of muscles. And yeah. And then he hires one of the, what was it? I think Twilight was one of the kids. One of the kids from at least one of the Twilight movies, he actually makes an action hero in the third one. That's just, yeah. And I'm sorry, it was enjoyable to see her kick ass, but Ronda Rousey, at least in that movie, maybe since then, in that movie she could not act. It was, which again, yeah, you know, a lot of the time Arnie and Sly can't, but again, if that had just stayed in the 80s and 90s, it would be a lot less embarrassing. It would be like, oh, back then we talk. But the fact that it's still today, you know, he finds people that can't act and puts them in, yeah, anyway. And of course I watch every major Terminator movie. I'm not sure I really see that changing. I'm not sure under what circumstances I would completely boycott an actual Terminator movie, a movie that is canon and that is set, or at least starts out as canon, and is set within the overall, yeah, it would have to be pretty bad. But I'm not going to give all of them as glowing reviews as I did of Terminator Genisys. And I maintain that movie is fun. I stand by what I said. Now, let's see. Reception. Moving into the what the critics said about them. And this is straight from Wikipedia's reception segment. And the film was budgeted at $35 million. It grossed $5.3 million in its opening weekend, and yeah, that was the worst opening for a Schwarzenegger film in over 30 years. And overall gross was $17.5 million, and with $10.5 million of that coming from America. So yeah. And yeah, overall final worldwide gross of $18.4 million. So that's, yeah. And it received negative reviews from critics, criticizing for gratuitous violence, unlikable characters. And on Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 20% based on 106 reviews, with the average score of 4.4 out of 10. Yeah. See, again, I'm not saying this is a good movie, but I did enjoy it more than it sounds like they did. And the site's consensus reads, Sabotage boasts one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's finer post-political performance, but it's wasted in a movie driven by grueling violence that punishes seemingly without purpose. And yeah. And that was actually yeah, now I might as well grab the rest of the from the Rotten Tomatoes. Let's see. The audience score is 36% with an average rating of 2.9 out of 5. So that, again, a bunch of people did enjoy it, at least. And this is definitely one of those movies. And with 22,216 user ratings, this is one of those movies that viewers like more than critics, because critics are kind of looking at it as more, is it a good overall movie and what messages is it sending and such. And a lot of users just are like, did I have fun watching this movie? Excuse me. On MetaCritic, the film holds a score of 41 out of 100 based on 31 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. IGN did give the film a rating of 7 out of 10 with the following verdict. Sabotage is far more effective than its action-centric trailers have suggested, with the film more mystery thriller that actually offers Arnold Schwarzenegger and the cool ensemble a chance to act and not just shoot guns. And I will say that the acting is pretty good. I just wish the characters were more likable also. Now, do I want to get into... I'm gonna skim. Let's see. Critic reviews. I'm gonna go ahead and skim these and then move on to the thoughts, which is where my fun notes are. Let's see. Schwarzenegger fans will enjoy this action fest, as this is undoubtedly his vehicle all the way. Sabotage contains the most graphic nastiness of any film Arnold has ever made. It'll keep your attention, excuse me, but you'll probably lose your lunch and feel slimed. Excuse me. unfortunately weighed down by a plot that we've seen before and characters we care too little about. Kind of cathartic action pick that's been long absent, reminding us that gritty revenge pieces have their place. Arnie's macho crew are such an obnoxious bunch of meatheads, and that goes too for Mirella Enos Itlone, woman member, that you will struggle to care. Part heist film, part action thriller, part murder mystery, the movie is punishingly violent. In one scene, the camera lingers over squashed body parts. Yeah, I'm not going to give that away. The ugliness is so pervasive that it becomes perversely fascinating. It becomes more and more clear that virtually all of the movie's protagonists are unlikable. Writer director David Ayer is hoping to unleash that bad guy action vibe he successfully enhanced in Training Day, and to a lesser extent, End of Watch. This time he lays an egg. I will also say, I do find, but I could say the same thing of Zack Snyder, the fact that after a movie that did this poorly, and that so many people didn't like, the fact that they got to make DCEU movies is very, yeah, I guess it speaks more to the what is it, Warner Brothers, I want to say, how much they're willing to forgive. And even after, Suicide Squad did so poorly with critics, apparently they're letting him do Suicide Squad 2 and what's it called, Gotham City Sirens, I want to say, and like solo Harley Quinn, solo Deadshot movies. Supposedly, we'll see how much of that goes anywhere. Scenes of people kicking down doors and shooting each other in the hood are efficiently handled. It's everything else that's a problem, and yeah, that's just what I said. It is worth remembering that John Wayne, an actor almost as inexpressive as he is, did much of his finest work at the tail end of his career. Sadly, post-Gubernator, Arnie hasn't yet found his equivalents to True Grit or El Dorado, and yeah, that's again, I would definitely be interested in seeing more dramatic, I mean, in his youth, Clint Eastwood, did incredibly well making, spaghetti westerns where he, shoots a bunch of people and we cheer for him. But he still went on to then make a movie like Unforgiven, which actually explores that kind of thing in a more, mature and more thoughtful way. There's, I would be interested in seeing a movie where Arnie legitimately, where it's really explored with the kind of stuff that, but yeah, instead it's just this, oh, remember when you thought he was really cool? He's still here. And a lot of the movies made today with them aren't that similar to the ones we're nostalgic for and about anyway. When I first watched and reviewed The Expendables, like the day before I watched and reviewed Commando, it's such a completely different movie from Expendables. Really, they don't have that much in common other than glorifying the one-man army character. And yeah, the new ones, the R-rated ones anyway, are much more violent and take more, yeah, that's something I would at least be able to respect if they were saying, okay, we're gonna make these movies the same way as they made them back then. But that's probably more of a financial risk. Arnie does his best, but as so often turns out to be limited in scope. When called upon to look upset, his inner cyborg punctures the mood. When he sighs, we snicker. I don't think that's true all the acting that he does in this, but maybe some. There won't be any awards, but for the first time, Arnie is actually acting here, and you know, I would say he's definitely acting in The Terminator as well, and the second one. But you know, it's not, you know, just because you're not expressing a lot of emotion doesn't mean that it's a bad acting performance or that it's easy. You know, try in the mirror to express just no emotion. The so-called governor has returned to what he does best, or maybe not best, but certainly most lucratively, making films high on action and low on credibility. Sabotage scores impressively on both counts. Despite some decent moments, the film struggles to realize its potential. Schwarzenegger gets one of his most complex roles yet in this messy, violent thriller, Another Trip to the Dark Side for filmmaker David Ayer. The film around them is too much, too gruesome, too locker room, too busy, too populated, and too daft. Well put. It doesn't really work. It's a bit like finding Mary Berry serving at your local kebab shop. It just doesn't feel right. I don't actually know who's... I really hope that wasn't a racist statement. I'm sorry. If it was, I immediately retract it. I should not have read that aloud. I should read through the one line before I actually start reading it aloud. Did Arnie have... actually, that seems kind of like a huge spoiler. I don't know why they would just put that on display like that. This is an ugly, brutal beast of a picture that plays like a video nasty from the 80s. Yeah. It really, the violence in it is filmed like someone trying to sell, yeah, like snuff film kind of thing. You know, I forget if it's been, if there is yet any actual proof that snuff films have ever existed, or but let's hypothetically say they do. The people filming those film the violence the same way this movie films the violence. There's plenty to guiltily savor, most of it unintentional, in a revenge yarn that unspools like End of Watch played for laughs. I don't want to make clear, I have read all of these critic reviews, I just haven't read them since watching the movie, since I just, you know, I finished watching the movie not long before pressing record. And I read these, some of these I read days ago. Straight to DVD would be a kindness. Straight to the waste bin would be a justice. I don't quite agree that it's that bad, but yeah. If you relish outbursts of weird Arnold pronunciation, the moment where he exclaims, "Time to do the Lord's work," is another minor classic. It feels like a cheap action flick, not the serious drama it is presented as, and plays like an unintentional call to end drugs prohibition and the idiotic war between cartels and law enforcement. And yeah, that review really, I remembered that distinctly after reading it, and that I could definitely tell while watching the movie. I really felt like that. Yeah, that's literally exactly what it felt like. The second half of that, the unintentional call to end drugs, yeah. Terribly generic action thriller with more holes in the plot than you'll see at a golf course. That really seems like he should have said than, you know, the people getting shot, but someone else does, and maybe he figured that someone else would, and he didn't want to be, yeah. You know, golf course, it's less obvious, I guess. And yeah. But yeah, trust me, there's a lot of people getting shot in this movie. I didn't count, but there's a lot. Let's see. A bloody, scuzzy, progressively preposterous whodunit blending old school and new wave to neutering effect. A film that happily lingers on extremely graphic disembowelments, yet can't get out of the room fast enough for a... Yeah, I'm not gonna... Yeah, just for certain sex scenes. The story spins off into a pseudo-whodunit as the group fall victim to apparent revenge killings, but it's sweet relief because most of them have all the charm and appeal of a root canal treatment. Ayer ramps up the four-letter word laden trash-talking to a degree of obnoxious self-parody, with what should merely be comic enhancement, keeping the main mystery hook from gaining traction and building tension. Absolutely perfectly put. I agree 100%. Flimsy testosterone-fueled stop on Schwarzenegger's Mucho Macho comeback tour. I don't know what Ayer's trying to prove by dunking the camera in spilled guts and having it linger over charred and frozen corpses. It really, some of the slasher kind of killings, yeah, it really feels like one of the slasher movies that tries to really get you with all the gore. And yeah, it's one of there's it feels off for the movie to have quite that level. If you cut out the whole slasher thing and just made this a very short action movie without a middle section, yeah, it would make more sense than... Yeah, though there's a lot of violence in those too, but not quite. Yeah. Let's see. David Ayer is proving to be increasingly adept at character work, but the plot of Sabotage is too dumb and opaque to recommend the film. Schwarzenegger is checked out. He's an immovable object in a film that struggles and fails to find the energy that will carry him along. Yeah, that's maybe true. Sabotage is a wholly unpleasant, unfocused, and downright ugly. Oh, yeah, sorry, no N. For most of its running length, Sabotage is a gritty, compelling motion picture with twists to make a pretzel envious. Unfortunately, it overstays its welcome. Loud, obnoxious, and one of the year's worst. By the final half hour, the body count becomes completely gratuitous, and Sabotage turns into a bloody mess in more ways than one. those just hoping for some good old action fun, you get one major shootout set piece, a couple small sequences, plenty of blood, gore, and foul language, and that's about it. And yeah, I would have to agree. Rambling and at times incongruous as it unspools a set of stock characters dithering about in a cesspool of rubbery ethics and dogged determination. And I think that's what I'm going to leave it at. And oh right, the middle one. Thoughts. Please note that this video has spoilers for the subject. Notes taken while watching. And this is most of the notes that I've taken since actually watching it, rather than ones that I took based on what I figured would be in the movie and such. The opening is really nasty. I went into this really figuring, you know, maybe critics are exaggerating, it can't actually be, and then the very first thing you see is the torturing, and just, excuse me, it really, for better or for worse, it sets the tone. And I find the acting here in the opening of Arnie is fine. And, you know, in 2 minutes in, less than 2 minutes in, we have two of these childish, you know, not all of them are bodily function, I guess. Let's go with locker room jokes, and those are in less than 1 minute, since they weren't in the very opening, which is thankfully completely free from that. Yeah. And, you know, here when the camera sexualizes the women, it's for the audience, not by major characters, as earlier in Ayer's directorial career. You know, there are women sexualized by the camera in Harsh Times, but it's the kind of, it's because one of the characters is staring at so it serves that function, where here it's, and again, just this is minutes after we've seen this really brutal torture. So I get that it's this thing of both are part of this world. This is a world of brutal violence, and these over-sexualized women. You have the kind of two women start kissing each other, just to get off guys who are into lesbian. And yeah, I get it. I get that that's part of the point, is that this is that world. But if it wasn't filmed the way it is, it would be a lot more, Harsh Times also has, within a very short space of time, in the very start of the film, some really, ugly, kind of violent stuff, and then, guys just having fun and such. Actually, yeah, that, I guess, comes a little later. Yeah, he wakes from these violent, dreams, memories, and then there is this, sweet girl who he's really in love with. That is an opening that really works, that really establishes that there's this conflict. You know, there are these two very different things that that uncomfortably that contrast with each other in the world of this violent protagonist who, you know, is trying to do something that you can sympathize with and such, but just yeah, it's, and again, it feels more Skip Woods than David Ayer to have this misjudged of a kind of, yeah. Again, this is, I don't want to give away to people who, anyone who wants to go blind into this movie, I don't want to give away this kind of tonal issue. You know, you should, I would have been, I'm glad that I saw it, that I didn't know just how bad the opening would be, because it makes me, I have an easier time of communicating to people how bad it is, because it was really bad for me as well. And, you know, I mean, if I couldn't handle seeing stuff like this, I wouldn't be doing that. You know, I wouldn't continue to follow David Ayer's career. And I really love how badass Lizzie is. I kind of wish that literally it wasn't just the first thing that, you know, that right away we see her really sexualized and such. But I do love how, yeah, right after that, that's what happens. You know, that you have her kicking his ass, shooting him, and then, you know, she's such a badass through the rest of the, yeah. And, you know, yeah, I'm gonna be referring to Josh Holloway as Sawyer. His groan of annoyance is the same as yeah, Josh is the actor playing the role in this movie. Sawyer is the character on Lost. Josh's groan of annoyance is the same one as Sawyer's. That's, yeah, just when you, the moment you hear it, to me it was like, you know, I expect to see the island, yeah. But yeah, you know, the action in this opening is, in this first big action set piece, in the one big action set piece, is really awesome. And we already have a mention of an ex-military character. And the callous reaction of the team members to all this violence, it feels like a multiplayer co-op tactical first-person shooter or something. It doesn't feel quite real. Again, I get that that's something they do to have an easier time of not being like, yeah, to not be completely crushed by how ugly this world is, but it just, yeah, it feels like, again, this is something, you know, for 13-year-olds to sit down and like high-five each other over. And it's really gross with the crap-filled toilet. And again, I really noted, you know, Josh's voice, he really sounds like Sawyer. And yeah, I get it. I'm just, I don't remember him sounding so much like Sawyer on the, I forget which one, but he, on one of the Command & Conquer games, you know, another one, you know, or is it the same one? I can't currently remember his name, but you know, the black guy on Alias, you know, he's also in one of those. But yeah, you know, in those he sounded like the character he's supposed to sound like. He didn't sound like Sawyer, which here he really does. And yeah, so we have this, they take some of the money that they were going to you know, they're talking about, you know, not all this money is going to be for Uncle Sam, and they take 10 million and they hide it really well. It seems like, you know, with the sewer thing. And then it turns out someone took that money, and yeah, and we see Arnie, you know, blow up the rest of the money. And then we see that someone came along and took the money before they got there. And then the movie actually tells us that their superiors somehow know that money was taken from their... It's absurd in so many ways. It's baffling. And again, I don't want to give that away for people who haven't, you know, again, if you're watching this segment, either you've watched the movie or you don't care about spoilers or such. But yeah, people who want to go into this movie and not know, just it's honestly, I wonder how many people, just when the movie got to that point, which again is very early on, how many people just, you know, at the very least mentally checked out. I can imagine some straight up walked out of the theater and demanded their money back. You know, some people, you know, if I wasn't so dedicated, I might have turned the DVD off. If this wasn't an Ayer movie, I'm not, and it didn't have Arnold Schwarzenegger, I can't guarantee that I wouldn't have taken the DVD out at that point and just been like, you know what, there are better things to spend my time on than watching something this stupid. And, you know, we see Josh's face, and despite the beard, his eyes really look the same. And once Caroline starts talking to all the, you know, when she comes over and they're like partying and such, at that point it really, okay, this is Sawyer. They just, you know, different facial hair. That's basically, you know, I'm not saying he behaves the exact same way, but the way he sounds and overall looks and such. That's actually, yeah. If you watch Lost and you're like, Sawyer's, I don't believe that Josh Holloway could possibly be even more obnoxious. You know, he has far less screen time than over the course of Lost, but he still manages to be so much more obnoxious. You know, even some of the fairly early stuff that Sawyer did, which was just, you know, he did some really obnoxious stuff early on. He's still so much more obnoxious here. And I haven't quite decided if it's awkward or like sly. The establishing, you know, they establish and stick together everyone's face and code name in this handheld, low-quality filmed interviews with their superiors. Yeah, I can't quite decide which it is, but I mean, I didn't remember their names for the rest of it, so it's like, and again, I mean, sometimes I'm bad with names, but maybe if they had done more to make them different from each other. I mean, once you realize that Tripod quit, which was also a decent kind of twist, because it was like, wait, where did that one guy go? And then cut back, and we see something we didn't see before. You know, that he quit in those interviews. Just yeah, that's, you realize that makes him at least slightly different than the rest of them. And yeah, I'm, you know, I don't know, that obviously not all of them could quit, then it wouldn't be unique anymore, but I think they should have done more things to, how about maybe one of them is actually really quiet, maybe some of the others give him a hard time for that, and he, like, you know, and then later we understand why he's so quiet or something, you know, just have them actually do different, yeah, you know, the facial hair was really the only really distinctly different about them, and then the fact that, you know, some of them are like hugely known. You know, by 2014, you know the face of Sam Worthington, which is why it baffles me that it took forever to really. I actually ended up just looking up, and it's like, oh right, it's Sam Worthington, obviously, you know. But yeah, and I think I actually kept mistaking. If every time I saw that guy with the, it's like cornrows, is that what they're, yeah, you know, and the beard, I kept expecting him to be Josh, but then it would cut to Josh, and it's like, oh wait, that's right, that's how he looks. Yeah. And more locker room joke. You know, the bottle, the you know, the two agents in the car and the bottle. Yeah. And, you know, you've got Arnie at the gym. Yeah. I get why you know, it is, yeah, that's what he's doing, but it also kind of feels like it's in his contract that he, you know, gets to be badass for so much of his, what's it called, screen time, you know. And he's got like a cigar smoking skull you know, tattoo on the right side of his neck. And one character literally says to Arnie, retire, end it, end the pain. And it's just, is he talking to Arnie's character or to Arnie himself? And, you know, basically everyone knows that they took the money, but not that the money got taken from the sewer before they got there. And you know, Floyd says, no one's been exonerated, but DC lost interest. Who do you have something on? You know, I'm slightly rephrasing. Yeah. We never actually found that out, did we? Or did I just miss? I don't know, I guess it's possible that, you know, several of the team members certainly say, no matter how much they might not like us, they do need us, you know, so they have to, yeah, we're uncomfortable, but we are necessary. And, you know, I do think that the scene, I mean, in both scenes have a lot of locker room talk, but the action, the big, you know, raid at the beginning, and then the scene of them sitting around, you know, some are playing video games, there's that guy getting a tattoo and all this stuff, you know, you can tell that they are, they're you know, they're behaving somewhat differently. They're not, there's frustration with their situation, and I do think that the movie does a good, I just wish the characters were more likable, because they actually do, yeah, you know, and Arnie comes in and says, you know, they're all back in the field. And, you know, they go through the training thing that we also see in, you know, the SWAT movie. The first one, I forget. Did they make like a sequel to that? Yeah. And, you know, they're being really unprofessional in the training exercise, and you know, and you have that conversation. Yeah, actually, I do think that's, you know, Monster, played by Sam Worthington, says, we're not a team anymore, we're just a gang, and there's no trust, no trust. And, you know, Arnie is like, there's, you know, you still know how to do this, and I trust you, and I'm gonna prove it. Kill the bad guys and don't kill me. And yeah, and now they're really being professional and doing it. It's, you know, and again, I thought it was an enjoyable scene, even though there was no one shooting back and no one got killed in the scene. So it's, yeah. And 25.5 minutes in, Arnie's got a cigar in his mouth. And we've got more locker room talk. And Monster says to Arnie, "You're the heart and soul of us. Don't ever forget that." And, you know, they're frustrated that they did the wrong thing and only got the punishment and not the ill-gotten gains. And, you know, Terrence Howard gets on a pole. Security tells him to back off it. To get back off it, one of the team members punches security and they leave because that's the time you leave. I feel like, you know, that again, someone please cut together the scene of, you know, Terrence Howard telling Tony, you know, on the flight, once the stewardesses start pole dancing, you know, and cut in the scene in this of Terrence Howard on the pole, and like, yeah, that's a fun little contrast there. And around this point, I underline these are really obnoxious, unlikable characters. And you know, the train runs into the mobile home, and I was like, is this supposed to be a funny death? Because, you know, you have the running back and forth, and you know, the keys aren't in the ignition, so he goes to get them. Maybe I missed something, but weren't the keys right there? Why didn't he pick them up? And, you know, so, and the door to the outside was locked too. So the killer parked the Winnebago on the track, knowing that the train would run through it, you know, that it wasn't like an inactive train track or anything. And, you know, then it's like, oh, but how could he be sure he would sleep long enough to not just realize, oh, my Winnebago's on a train track, better move it before a train comes through. You know, the killer might have, you know, just given him an injection of something, and that would keep him under. Although, I guess, wouldn't they have talked about that then in the once they start looking into it? But I mean, there wouldn't be a lot of physical evidence left once he's been turned to mush. And, you know, and then we have some homophobic jokes. Just, you know, Caroline, I was like, okay, so she's gonna be a character, maybe I'll like her. And then she says these, yeah. And actually, I mean, when it comes to Caroline, it's counterproductive. The whole point of her character is that she's not ready to fight, friends. She's not as far out there as they are because she hasn't seen as much. And they keep, like, did it 2 or 3 times, you know, members of the team like show her pictures or explain a thing to her or something, and they're like, see, we've seen this awful stuff, you haven't, so you're not ready for this. And yet she almost immediately, after she's introduced, she has this, you know, I found that the introduction to Officer Diskant in Street Kings, you know, he is a badass, but he's not being as like locker room-y and you know, such as, you know, the characters on the Vice Squad, you know. So it's, yeah, it's, you don't doubt that Diskant is, you know, the overall, like, he belongs in this kind of, yeah, you know. But yeah, so clearly Ayer can do it. And yeah, around this point was where, yeah, I mentioned that Josh really looks like Sawyer. And then, you know, after all this, that's the stripper. No, she's a stripper. And then they really were expecting a stripper. And I will say, I mean, when Caroline leaves and she's like, don't bother, they give lousy tips or something. I don't know. Maybe I was just at that point kind of like mentally like, I might as well enjoy this more than, you know. But yeah, they really, I don't know, that joke, worked okay for me, I guess. And, you know, Caroline's, I'm like, watch the road, Caroline, please. That's, yeah. And, you know, Arnie's like, you don't need that. Yeah, it's not like a member of your team recently died brutally under. I mean, I guess the idea is that at that point he doesn't really think that someone's going after all of them. I don't know. It's, yeah, Arnie is being that character in the slasher movie who doesn't know he's in the slasher movie. And Caroline really doesn't take kindly to being partially covered in blood. Is she the until now unknown sister of Dexter and Brian? And, you know, and they found hair, which I guess was specifically planted by, yeah, I mean, if we're going with the theatrical cut, not the original, kind of, you know, Lizzie turned out to be, yeah. And Arnie's like, always assume that someone is listening. Tell that to Trump and his administration. Or don't. The leaks are actually quite, yeah, it gives us a real, we get a real idea of what it's like in there. And we don't even have to read a book about World War II. How do you make that mistake? How do you accidentally buy a World War II book instead of the one about the Trump administration? Yeah. And, you know, and gradually as more people, as there were a lot of mentions of the codename Monster, I really got to think, you know, the thing about using the codename Monster is that if someone actually thinks he's behaving like a monster at some point, they'd have to think of a synonym for monster when the word monster is the first to come in mind when someone's behaving like a monster. And, you know, Caroline really would stick Lizzie in the joint, and she's right, Lizzie can't go one day without drugs. How can we know those numbers if we don't know those numbers? This is information storage, not information dispersal. Yeah, that line's from memory. I should have looked it up, but yeah. What? Where you going, Caroline? There's always a guy like that and a line like that. That's how you know things are serious. And this is when we realize the tripod quit. Just because you're in jail doesn't mean you didn't do it. That's, yeah, quite good. And when they're approaching Tripod, that's very Commando. And him actually setting traps up, it's like, okay, so he's basically, you know, Arnie in Predator. And yeah. And another action scene. And I was actually literally sitting there just thinking, it's been a while since there's been an action scene, and this would be a good time for one. So, yeah. Excuse me. And, you know, really, it's the first real one since the opening one, and I do think both are good action scenes. Since otherwise, it's just the training one, but yeah. And we've got some shots with the cameras attached to the gun barrel. I think those are kind of hit and miss for this one. And, you know, that one guy bled out, and that, yeah, so they know. I guess they probably said it and I just missed it or something, but I guess basically Lizzie told, you know, and anonymously told the cartel Tripod took that money from your, you know, yeah, from safe house or whatever it's called, and this is where you can find him. And so they go and try to kill. But the ones that are found that were dumped into water, they didn't actually do anything, right? She killed them, and she took got their DNA, killed them, and to frame them, expecting them not to be, yeah. this isn't going to bring them back. Holy crap, a scene in which these guys aren't being total a-holes. Go home now and pan, and wow, I know they're probably ironic, but I did not expect to see teddy bears and such in this film, especially not so close to one of the cool characters. And, you know, Caroline and Arnie get together. I did not see that coming, and I don't think that was a good thing. And around this times where I noted that the action and tension were better than the slasher mystery. Tension meaning, you know, scenes where you think that maybe they're going to accidentally, you know, they're like, yeah, the before people start shooting each other, tripods placed, there's tension, and that tension worked. You know, the moment guns get involved in the movie, I think that, yeah. And, you know, as they get into the apartment complex, I noted these guys did not plan well for stopping the team, and I figured maybe the team are being lured into a trap, lulled into being careless. And monsters like dead men walking, and nothing really came of that. Or was he saying that that means the killers are still out there, so we still can't be sure that we won't be killed? When I first, I don't know, actually, you know what, the subtitles didn't just translate it literally as dead men walking, it translated as will get the death penalty. And that obviously colored my perception of what he was communicating. Maybe maybe what he really was saying was, they're still out there, we're still not safe. And yeah, I don't know, I guess maybe it was a trap, and the idea was that they would kill some of the members of the team other than Lizzie. Yeah. And, you know, originally Arnold, since he was supposed to be the original killer. And, you know, suddenly we have a lot of young children around the violence, again, for this kind of, aren't we edgy kind of thing. And it's like, if there weren't quite so many, you know, you have the kid there as the cartel killers are being fished out, and then you have, you know, going through the apartment complex. Again, I'm not saying that that it's not realistic, but maybe 3 or 5 children within just a few minutes of screen time, right next to this violent gunning down of people, and just, yeah, it's, you know what, if there was just one, imagine that. Imagine if after all the killing, they're like, okay, we're completely safe. And then, like, the camera pulls back a little, you know, and there's the kid of the people they just shot, you know, Kill Bill style, you know, there's the kid, and they turn around, and the kid is just, like, staring at them, and it lingers a little. It lingers the way it does when it's violence, you know, instead of just all these kids here, you know. There are a lot of things, you know, it's quite realistic for, you know, if a movie had, like, a ton of scenes of people going to the bathroom, but, you know, just because that's realistic doesn't mean we want to see it. You know, if there's not a distinct point to it, we don't want to see a scene like that. So, yeah, you know, don't show something just because it's realistic if it's really uncomfortable and it doesn't have a specific point. And especially if it doesn't really end up having that much of an effect. It ends up just kind of numbing. Like, oh, there's another kid. And Arnie watches the video of the torture of his wife again. Ooh, Mexican standoff. And it falls apart just as fast as in the college humor video. It's like a verbal Mexican standoff. And Lizzie admits to Monster that she's with sugar. And then there's a line, it was Breach's idea, we thought it would make him happy. And it's just, I think Monster was the one who said that. I get it, but I just feel like that's, yeah, I don't, but I mean, it does, I will say, that and then the later twist that he himself took the money. You know, ultimately those two twists together basically do make a certain amount of sense. Yeah. The DEA would throw us in a hole and then throw away the hole. Ayer liked that line so much he used it in Suicide Squad too. I think I already heard someone say that that line was originally in Sabotage, but yeah, that really, wow. And then it turns out, you know, Lizzie had shown up there and shot and we realized that Sugar drove. And Lizzie cuts Monster's jugular and immediately regrets it. And again, this scene would actually work really well if the characters weren't so unlikable, you know. But yeah, actually, yeah, it kind of, it works okay because that is, I mean, ultimately, it's actually, it's like how in real life, you know, like football players will, you know, football players and people who do stuff like wrestling and such sometimes also use violence against people close to them, you know, spousal abuse and such. And basically, you know, they've learned that the way to that the most important thing they can do, the way to succeed in the world is to use violence. And so when it comes to people close to them, they can't really distinguish anymore, basically. You know, and I'm not making excuses for them. It's still, what they do is awful and they should be prosecuted and stopped. And really, personally, I think we should stop rewarding violence like that, pretty much, which I acknowledge is, you know, interesting in to say in a review of a movie where I say that some of the, you know, violence is, you know, compelling to watch. But real life violence, at least, it's different when you do it in front of a camera and it's purely, I would say, at least, and as far as I know, it's more of a thing that people who do violence, yeah, in real life and are rewarded for that violence go on to do other, you know, the military also has a problem with that. You know, it's that kind of thing. And yeah, you know, ultimately Lizzie, she's so used to using lethal force when someone close, you know, when someone is physically close to her and they're doing something that's dangerous for her. And yeah, him, you know, ruining her passport, that really messes up her chances of getting away. And so instinctively, because it's what she's learned how to do, she kills him. And immediately, and again, that scene, if she said, you know, I should have done this years ago or something, you know, if she made some locker room joke, the scene would be so much less compelling. And just, the movie needed more like that. Needed scenes where characters end up, yeah, you know, I do think overall Monster, he clearly realizes that there's a lot wrong here, and he even tries to tries to stop it by telling people this is wrong and explaining and such. But yeah, you know, other than that one bit with Lizzie and then his scenes, yeah, there should have been stuff like that for the other characters as well. Honestly, you know what? I'm not sure I really disliked Monster. Although some of his scenes with Lizzie also, eh. Actually, yeah, maybe. Anyway, to return to the scene. It's a man in a refrigerator. Always make sure you keep your dead men refrigerated to keep them fresh for longer. I'm making these jokes because the movie makes jokes about so many of these things, and when it then tries to play a scene straight, you feel like joking. And Lizzie literally says, "Who would I be with?" Obviously, Sugar. It's yeah. Since he wants to be a hero, let's give him someone to save. Man, did not take long for Sugar to turn sour. It's really, I don't know. I mean, is the idea that they're telling themselves and each other, that Sugar and Lizzie, he's, you know, he's actually the bad guy. I mean, I guess he's the one who got them to steal the money, so maybe the two of them are thinking, we wouldn't be in this mess if not for that. It just, wait, how long was Sugar in on the other killings? Is that the idea? Lizzie killed, or is this because originally it was going to end with the reveal that Arnie was the killer? Maybe this scene was shot. Maybe Lizzie realized that and told Sugar, and so yeah, I don't know. And around this, yeah, at this point I noted the middle of the movie with the slasher mystery and little action is kind of boring compared to the start and last third of the film. And, you've got this car chase with someone shooting out of the trunk. Good setup for an action scene, and I enjoyed the action scene. And, since she doesn't fall out in spite of all the fast driving, quick turns and such, I'm guessing Sugar strapped her to her lower half into the trunk, and that does make sense. It would be easy for him to do that and then close the trunk over, and yeah, and it would make sense that they would plan specifically for driving off like that, and yeah. And, Sugar runs over a bicyclist, and the blood, yeah, the blood covers the, what's it called? Yeah, all the blood on the windshield means he can't properly orient. And then he drives in and is, crushed by the thing. And Lizzie survives because she was lying down in the trunk. And it just, yeah, basically, this bicyclist, it might as well have been, that someone, actually, he might, if he had, like, missed the bicycle, if there was someone walking with, like, a bag full of groceries, and they quickly got out of the way of the car, but their groceries, like, spilled onto the front of the windshield, that would have had the same effect as what they actually did, and what they actually did just turned this dead person into a prop. We know absolutely nothing about her. She exists to be killed, and yeah. And yeah, and Lizzie says she killed them because they took the money. She didn't know which of them took the money, so she started killing all of them. And then we find out that Arnie was the one who took the money, and Arnie is gone, and Caroline basically disappears from the movie, and she was in the original endings, so that's basically why yeah. And, Arnie bribes an official for the names of the men who tortured his family, and he goes specifically after the person who who tortured and killed her, which we already knew he still had, yeah. It really, how was this not the original? How did the original ending not have him kill that person, but just whine that, oh, they won't, my teammates won't let me, or the members of my team, he's the leader of the team, yeah, they won't let me kill that guy, but yeah. And, you know, Arnie goes up there and puts the gun under the dude's chin, and the dude still takes the drug. And, you know, Arnie goes in with just, you know, he's got the one grenade to help do the, you know, and then he's got the pistol which he reloads. I mean, if maybe if they didn't let him win there at the end, you know, I do get that he was ready to die once he's stopped, you know, once he's killed that one guy. But then that should probably have been, you know, there's an episode of Without a Trace, which, you know, it's one of those shows you can enjoy it, but there's a lot of really, yeah, stuff in that show that is, when you stop to think about it, it's a very manipulative show, and the writing is immensely contrived to make room for all these twists and turns along the way of the individual investigations. There's one episode that has this guy who's completely ready to die, and he's got like a gun, and he's got hostages, and yeah, I'm not going to give too many details away, but basically, he then, the episode basically ends with him taking the clip out of the gun, so we, the audience, know that he's not going to shoot anyone, and then he gets out right to, you know, the place is surrounded by police, but he steps right out of the front door and is gunned down, and, you know, it's suicide by cop, and basically he knew that that's what would happen there. You know, if that had basically been the ending, you know, so something more like that, then instead, yeah, but it's not the only time Ayer has done this kind of thing. But yeah, really, the whole scene feels kind of like a Western. You know, he goes into this bar, and with one pistol he shoots, yeah. But yeah, and honestly, I think the movie would have been more fun if only one member of the team got killed, and then they started hunting down the guys who supposedly did it, and we get several scenes similar to the one where they storm the apartment complex and kill the wrong ones. Obviously not saying they should all be apartment storming scenes, and not saying there shouldn't be consequences. Maybe that's how more of the team members get killed in retaliation, but in action scenes, like the tripod scene, you know. But the murder mystery is boring, and its resolution is pretty bad, you know, and reading about the original endings, those were also bad. You know, it's one of those, I forget who said it, but there's a quote about the way to write a good murder mystery is to start with the ending, and here they kind of thought, oh, this would be a cool murder mystery, without really thinking about the ending, and then when they got to writing the ending, they didn't have that many good ideas for it, or they did write the ending first and mistook that ending for a good ending. Plot holes. What follows are 3 different ways of saying that the core concept is absurd, which it definitely is. These are all IMDb goofs, the plot hole section of that. At the beginning of the movie, Breacher blows up hundreds of millions worth of money in a pile. After DEA agents start to investigate, they know there are 10 million gone missing seconds prior to them blowing up. Since the money, and this is the second one, since the money was blown up / burned, A, how do they know that 10 million is missing, and B, whether or not there is some missing, the only ones who know are the cops. So if the cartel finds out, guess who told them? And 3, the team were asked, where the missing $10 million were after the entire block of money was blown to Kingdom Come. No one in the entire world would know after such a devastation that there was any money missing, because it was all destroyed and burned to ashes. The makers of the movie obviously didn't think this huge plot hole through properly. I feel like, I don't know if how the camera's microphone is going to take that, so I won't do it, but I feel like I should be clapping. That deserves applause. That dude really went. Yeah, it just, I mean, that last sentence is kind of editorializing. Like, at that point, you're not quite being this unbiased source of just information anymore, but yeah, that was enjoyable to, yeah. Plot. And this is literally just Wikipedia plot section copy-pasted into my notes. Now, and I'm just going to go into anything I find interesting in there. And yeah, and this points out that, you know, yeah, I forgot to mention, but yeah, you know, despite Arnie winning, you know, he did get shot in the chest in the gunfight. But yeah, you know, as this points out, you know, he sits at the table, takes a shot of whiskey, lights up one last cigar, and smiles as he hears the sirens. So yeah. And endings. And this is from IMDb trivia. The film had originally a completely different ending. It was oddly worded. In that ending, Carol and Breacher apprehend Lizzie, who confesses. Breacher shoots Lizzie before she can reveal more, and Caroline becomes aware that Breacher is behind the killings. Does that mean that Lizzie only confessed to killing Monster, and then she was about to say that it must have been Breacher who did the killings, or did Breacher somehow manipulate Lizzie to do the killings? I don't know. Breacher slips away undetected. Caroline and his partner Jackson then head to the lake to retrieve the money. Breacher shows up, stabs Jackson, and begins fighting Caroline in the water. The writer filmed two alternate versions of this ending. In the first one, Caroline escapes and Breacher is confronted by two police cars. When he tries to leave with the money, Breacher kills the cops and prepares to flee in one of the cars. Then Caroline appears and asks him why he killed his team. He tells her that they wouldn't let him kill his family's killer, who he knew he could get. And she then shoots him when he tries to go for his gun. Again, like I said, he's basically whining about how was the original ending not always Arnie kills the killer of, yeah. In the second version, when Caroline asks, Breacher tells Caroline that a member of his team betrayed him and one of them was responsible for selling his family to the cartel for money. He didn't know which one, so he took them all out. He shoots Caroline when she tries to apprehend him, and then leaves with the money. Both versions were rejected by the producers, who forced Ayer to create a new ending which showed Arnold Schwarzenegger's character as an anti-hero instead of as a villain. And I do think, at least, you know, the idea that one of the team members was responsible for giving the cartel his family, yeah, that then you could more understand. I mean, it's still obviously completely wrong, completely out of proportion to go and, yeah, but at least for that you can kind of see how he would get to that point. And the film could have ended with a dying Lizzie confessing to Breacher and Caroline she was responsible for the kidnap, torture, and murder of Breacher's family, and that she sold him out to the cartel. And yeah, you know, that would have made some more, but that's still, yeah, it's not quite clear if that was with Lizzie also killing the other members, or if that was with Breacher killing the other members, or what. But yeah, there's not really none of these endings are good. Not the theatrical one, not these alternate ones. User review. This was the one MetaCritic user review for this movie that contained spoilers, or that was labeled as containing spoilers. Sabotage was a movie with so much potential, but ultimately failed to live up to that potential because it had a ridiculous premise. The premise was that this elite, undercover DEA team attempts to steal $10 million from a pile of what appears to be hundreds of millions of dollars. They then blow up the drug cartel's money, as they were apparently instructed to do by the American government, and upon returning to get their $10 million later on, the money is gone. Now here's where the ridiculousness kicks in. The government and the cartel somehow seem to know exactly how much money was taken, and interrogate the team for 6 months, trying to get them to admit guilt. I'm sorry, but that would be like a swimming pool draining, but someone knowing that you took a cup of water out of it beforehand. That's a pretty decent way of putting it, yeah. Now, normally this type of stuff wouldn't cause me to take a movie with fantastic acting, dark and gritty action, and solid character development down to a 5 out of 10 rating, which is indeed what he gave it. While I thought the plot development was also crap, the premise ultimately hurts the movie because every single dramatic element and moment of suspense and intrigue in the entire movie is built entirely on that faulty premise. Yeah. And then he says it is a shame too because this movie had IMDb's reboot potential. And quotes, and this is directly from IMDb, the IMDb quotes section. And I did not read every single one of these. Look at you with your 48% body fat. Well, check again. Okay. Nope, still not them. I do think the line, you know, I can take your family, but I'm not like you. You know, that was a decent, but that's probably also to make sure that we realize, nope, he's an anti-hero, not a villain. But honestly, I'm almost certain he shoots him after saying, but I'm not like you. I suppose there's an argument to be made that he should shoot him and then say that, so that the torturer dies thinking that his own family is going to be taken. And, you know, they find the meth, and she actually, yeah, instead of just doing the droplet test that, yeah. You smoke? Only when I find my witnesses nailed to the ceiling. You're awesome on a road trip. Yeah, first it has the line that I already quoted. Just because you're not in jail doesn't mean you didn't do it. You're awesome on a road trip. You know that? And that is everything. Almost 2 hours to the minute, too. In closing, yeah, I can't hate this movie. But I do think that it could have been a lot better. And I will say there's some of the really immature stuff in Suicide Squad that I now realize was probably, he was still, you know, this movie still had the kind of, I mean, Fury also has a lot of locker room, but it's not excessive, and you do still sympathize, excuse me, with the characters, even the ones who are extremely locker roomy, and so it's not as though Ayer can't do it, and Street Kings also, but there's less screen time for the locker room stuff. The the characters other than the protagonist for the locker room stuff. So yeah, and didn't Fury come out the same year as this? Maybe was this maybe left like held back for a little while or something? I don't know. As they redid the ending or something. But some of the immature stuff in Suicide Squad makes a lot of sense. It was basically Ayer was, yeah, kind of stuck in the mindset from making this one. Although I will say that movie is nowhere near as immature as this. But I suppose part of that is also that it's PG-13, where this is R-rated. But yeah, just the movie could have been a lot better, and it really from the ground up. I mean, when I first heard the concept, I figured that I didn't think that they would destroy the rest of the money, you know, blow up the rest of the money. I figured that it would be more like there were so and so many like cases, you know, suitcases full of money, and once like, yeah, you know, once the whoever was investigating, you know, once they had, you know, gotten all the suitcases into like evidence, you know, and are looking over, they open, and one of them is like partially empty. You know, maybe don't make it 10 million, maybe make it less than 10 million, and just one of the suitcases has some less money, and, you know, maybe flashback, and then you see that as they were dealing with these suitcases, you know, yeah, they actually open one of them, and maybe at first you think it's just one of them who was doing, but no, one of them opens the suitcase, and all of them together work on hiding that money, you know. But because then it makes some amount of sense that although for that it would really have to be spur of the moment, because they wouldn't plan on making it so obvious that they stole the money, but just something like that, you know, instead of this, something where you could believe that the money, that it would be, you know, that they would realize that the money was, you know, maybe have someone, maybe there's an undercover agent, and maybe they could actually work that into the plot, like the undercover agent was there and like maybe helped count the money and the yeah, and the guy, you know, and so when they count the money, they realize there are several million missing, and they put that on the team, and then the team, you know, maybe track down the guy, that undercover guy, you know, and maybe make him one of the suspects as a killer of the team. You know, they like track him down, maybe try to intimidate him, or just like figure out who he is and consider killing him, and maybe he ends up dead, and it's like, which of them killed him, so, some kind of thing. But just as it is, it makes no sense that anyone could know that any money was missing. And then you also have this thing of way too much of the movie being this murder mystery instead of this action. You know, I mean, I will say some of Ayer's movies, you know, if you go into them expecting an all-out action movie, that's not what you get, you know, but they tend to be these really intense thrillers where you know, I mean, with a lot of plot development or character development, which this does have, but the characters, this is the only one, I already mentioned that, where just none of them are sympathetic, you know, even, I mean, you could, the end of Watch, the two cops are almost too perfect, you know, it's like they just, everything they do is, they're such good guys, but they're still interesting, you know, it's like the, you know, what's that thing? It's interesting a-holes. You know, they're not a-holes, but they're interesting goody-goodies, you know, and you just, what is it? Gary Stews, you know, male Mary Sue's. There's still something there. There's still just here. There. Some of them are fairly distinct from one another, but there's so much locker room, and they're so. We don't get a lot of time where they're like apart. It's always them bouncing off each other, and so sometimes I honestly yeah, like if there are a lot of like motivations and lines of dialogue and such that I couldn't tell you which of the characters they came from, because they're all in the same room, all of them are yelling at each other and mocking each other and making locker room comments, and that's also just really exhausting. And yeah, just, it's like I said, it's the only Ayer movie that I don't love, and it's the only of them that is legitimately just broken from the ground up. But I can't hate it because the action is, yeah, it gets you, it gets the, you know, it's pulse pounding and well shot and genuinely, I mean, you would figure it would get much more repetitive than it does for, yeah, just, and ultimately it's also just, I mean, if the action scenes in this were basically like the, like a, you know, when you start up, I want to say it's the second Payday. I haven't spent a lot of time playing either Payday, though they are quite enjoyable games. I have a lot of, you know, positives to them. I think it's the second one. It has like this running video of like them on, the guys on a heist, you know, and this, yeah, if you cut the action scenes in this, especially the first big one, into that kind of background video, or like the you know, there's the one for Kane Lynch 2, you know, that's also this kind of heist, and that's violent, and it doesn't really, you know, and we're not supposed to, it's a scene where we're not, you know, it's just, if you want like guys shooting at each other but you care, watch Heat. You know, that's a freaking classic. And yeah, this isn't. And it's just, yeah, honestly, I figure it's probably, this is an attempt to outdo Heat, but they learned the wrong lesson. They thought, oops, they thought that the point was to make the characters really, like, I mean, in Heat you do have some characters who do really awful things for you know, not the right reason, and that kind of, but it's not every single character, and not every single character is so just, yeah, you know. And the I suppose that pretty much covers, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there are too many things wrong with the movie, but the things that it gets right, it gets so right. It's a really, it's so frustrating that it gets the wrong things so right, so wrong. And yeah, I honestly, I would be fine with like chunks of this movie basically being repurposed, just slightly rewritten or done. Yeah, I'm not saying cut, you know, cut the scenes from this and cut them into other movies, but I'm saying if another David Ayer movie opens with someone storming a cartel safe house in a manner very similar to this, I wouldn't have a problem with that, as long as the rest of the movie isn't Sabotage. But again, I do want to clarify, I overall enjoyed watching this movie. You know, some of the time I was just laughing at the dumb stuff in it, and I very much enjoyed recording this, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Please comment, thumbs up, and subscribe for more content.